Hey, sweet souls, and welcome to Changeliscious, the podcast that turns life's hot mess into your next big yes. I'm your host, Hedi, work-life innovation coach, design thinker, storyteller, and chaos to success connoisseur. Around here, we don't just talk about change, we live it, we breathe it, we dance with it. So buckle up, grab your favorite drink, and let's dive into the wild, brave, and beautiful journeys of people who dared to remix their lives and came out tasting success. This is Changeliscious. Let's make change delicious.
Giulia, who are you? What do you do?
So I'm Giulia Hartz. I'm an Italian illustrator and strategic designer. I moved to Berlin 8 years ago when we met. And I have a background in product design and then strategic design as my master course. When I graduated, I worked for 2 years in an agency here in Berlin, where I got experience into facilitating events, workshops, and supporting speakers to craft presentations and in general, improve their storytelling techniques. On the side, I started illustrating just at home on my iPad, and before that on my sketchbook. And it's illustration is not really something I really studied, but it became a huge help for me to process certain emotions, deal with depression, and in general for my mental health. It was just really fun. I mean, I processed trauma by laughing about it. That's my coping mechanism. So I used illustration to do that, and eventually I started posting that on Instagram, and people started to relate with that, which is kind of great, or maybe not so good for them because then they feel the same things I do. Anyhow, as I was working at the agency, I was just posting on my Instagram, and my following started to grow, which led me to the point of opening a small online shop, selling my prints, a little bit of products with my designs on it. And after 2 years of doing both things, basically, I decided to leave my full-time job and try out freelancing as an illustrator and brand designer, which is what I currently do. And the more and more I do these, the more I become also a content creator. In general, just yapping about design and illustration and the things. Actually, anything. I talk about anything. But in general, design related topics and art related topics.
When you talk about trauma and your creativity, no, it's really, this is if you're comfortable with it,
no problem.
Because that's how you started, right? You started processing your trauma with your creativity, and you didn't give an F about that's just from the outside, correct me if I'm wrong, your formal education. So we met at Design Academy Berlin. You learned a lot about whatever, strategic design and whatnot. And then you did that. And then you said, okay, well, you know what? I'm just following my healing path. And that became something very meaningful that resonated with other people. Can you tell us something more about this process?
I mean, I don't think I left behind my background. I don't think studying strategic design is something that necessarily puts you on a certain road, as opposed to, for example, studying product design, as it was for me before. I studied in Milano. I did my bachelor in product design at Politecnico, and I didn't like that. I mean, I cherish and I'm really grateful of what I learned, but I don't want to be a product designer. I'm a horrible product designer. You wouldn't want me to be a product designer. And when I finished that bachelor, I was design is cool, but I don't see myself doing technical drawings and engineering things. That's not me. So that's why I moved to strategic design. And for me, the whole experience of doing a master course was much more about, getting familiar with a certain tool set, design thinking, and using that mindset of being a strategic designer and apply that to any kind of field you're working into. So I think I use so much of what I learned during the master course in everything I do, even if it's just an illustration. And I see that with my clients. They are, in general, I don't want to brag, but in general, they're really happy to work with me because of the way I work. My process is really participatory, is really inclusive. I communicate a lot. I let them see through my creative process, and I set up a certain amount of tools and things that allow them to see what I'm doing so that they always feel part of it. And that lowers the chances of them getting a result that is completely out of the path of their expectations.
So you're not having the normal path, correct me if I'm wrong, is we have a conversation and they tell you their expectations and then you deliver, right? But through this process, you have touch points where you ask them for feedback, or how does that work?
Sure. So at the beginning, if we take, for example, a classic illustration project, I'm not going to start with them sending a briefing. I mean, yeah, sure, they can send it. But what I always want to do is go through the briefing together in a little like workshop session that I begin the process with, a workshop kickoff. And in that call, it's like about a 30 minutes call, I set up a Miro board that is a shared workspace, you might know, where I set up like my whole template and my all, like all the areas I want to cover. We go through that together and we basically touch upon the expectations they have, all the ideas that they might have in their minds. If they have any reference, they can just drag them in. I'm going to talk about the things that I absolutely shouldn't do. So is there something, any kind of like constraint? Let's write it down. Deliverables, timeline, all of it. I want to go through it together and I want to visually record that. And from that on, I always keep that Miro board as a sharing space. I don't want to have 1,000 emails going back and forth, because that's where things get complicated. That's where people start asking for more than they should. And I don't want to see, clients want to take more from you than they should. It's simply really hard to keep track of all the changes if it's an email chain. So I like to keep that visual, and I'm going to have, a field called like first iteration. And that's the first iteration. So if we get to the second iteration and you're still asking for changes, you literally can see that on the board. Mm-hmm. All the feedback is also visually recorded on the board. I also know that it's sometimes hard for clients to give feedback or structure that in a useful way. So I'm going to use a feedback grid for that. And I'm going to have basically everything recorded so that we always have that spot. It's also kind of cool because if you're working with a brand, very often, like, the bigger the brand is, the bigger the amount of people in the teams. So if you have a Miro board, it's really useful to have one space that can just share with a colleague or with a boss to just give them an overview of what's going on with me. And in general, so far, I had positive feedback in terms of like process. And hopefully if not only the result is good, but like also for the people, the process of working together was smooth, there's maybe a higher chance that we get to do things together again.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you think they feel in the process? Have you had feedback about their is it about, I'll frame it, is it about more security? Is it about being creative as well? What do you think is their main gain from this entire process, a part of the fact that they get something out of it that they like?
I think I'm making their job easier. Because at the end of the day, that's, everybody has a task to do, and working with creatives can be challenging. I think the core thing is that people that have to work with creatives often are not creatives, so they are not aware of how the creative process works. And that's why I think sometimes creatives get frustrated, and people who are not creative get frustrated because they don't speak the same language. Right. So it's I think someone has to do the job of finding common ground where we can communicate and share how we work and include each other in the process. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of fighting. And that's not going to help anybody. I'm going to have a stomachache, and they're going to have a stomachache, and what's the point, But I think it's also not easy, and that's why, my background and the way, what I studied in the master course and also my background at the agency really taught me to, empathize with the communication style of other people. It's a sort of like workshop facilitation, although I'm designing, but I also want to take care of them and how they feel, and I want them to be involved and participating really in what we're doing, because it's not only about me, it's a project we're doing together. And I also value the point of view that they have, because I might be illustrating, but I don't work there 24/7. They have much more knowledge on the specific topic than I do.
Right.
So I try to use as much as I can from their knowledge to bring that into the illustration. And it's really good in the project to have both kind of like depth of knowledge. For me, in general, with my illustration, try to summarize things and synthesize concepts. For them, they really know in depth their topic.
So we have different roles, right? You're, on the one hand, you're the creator or the creative, the expert in that field, but then you're also a knowledge facilitator. Is that true?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would say that that's the title I just give myself. Nobody asked for that. I'm just I'm just gonna do a kickoff, okay? How's everybody like that? And that happens with illustration, and when I do brand design, that happens even more, because as I start my process, I do a 2 hours and a half branding workshop where we really deep dive through all the components, and I do a little bit of brand strategy with them and with the clients, and we go through everything. And to me, I've said no many times to branding projects because they didn't want that. And for me, it doesn't make sense to just receive a briefing and start working onto that. I just feel it seems cheaper, but actually costs more energy because I'm not understanding fully what you want. You are not understanding fully what you want.
Right.
And we're going to end up working more and being more frustrated. So for me, like these really facilitation design thinking tools are really, really important in the process as much as my design skills.
And which ones can you? Okay, you said feedback grid. You said the process, that it's collaborative, that it's open, and that you have a lot of touch points. What else? What else is important for you?
Yeah, sure. Like, I mean, in general, I kick off my, let's say, the branding workshop, for example, which is a little bit more of an extensive one because there we really use like a lot of tools from design thinking. Like, for example, one thing that I explained at the beginning is the mindset we're gonna keep throughout the whole process. So I don't know, like iteration. Also during the workshop, we only have 2.5 hours, so we're gonna just write down the first thing that comes to mind, like, like done better than, nothing. We are gonna also, iterate quickly. We are gonna, it's like the design thinking mindset of like also just giving feedback to each other, being open, build on each other ideas. But that's, the pretty much the basics of design thinking. And then, I think throughout the workshop, I do use pretty much all design thinking tools. I do stakeholder map. We use, of course, like on Miro, like we have a lot of post-its going on. We time everything because we only have 2 hours, so I'm gonna push them to really stick up to my time constraints. Also, of course, on Miro, it's digital boards, you can't really draw, but I often ask to use just emojis to represent concepts, which is a quick way of visualizing for me. Like I always set up a idea fridge so that they can write down their ideas that they have before we start the process. We do an audience profile, a sort of like persona template, I kind of like mixed up so that we can make it fit into the timing, but also, empathize with the audience. All these kind of things. Really.
Yeah, that and you I think it has in the background. Giulia, and sounds super interesting. Now, this is your one role, but what has been happening as well is all of this following, all of these creative projects that at least I get to experience because I'm following you and that you are sharing. And where are you more yourself?
Well, I think I try to be myself in like everything I do. It's just like I modulate based on the environment and on the platform. There are certain platforms that allow a little bit more of spontaneity and, like freedom, and also the kind of like humor that goes on that platforms allows me to. I couldn't make the same jokes I make on TikTok, for example, on LinkedIn. You know what I mean?
No, can you elaborate? Maybe somebody doesn't know. What do you mean exactly?
It's just that there's also just a certain language, for example, that is understood on TikTok, and I think that would be simply not received on LinkedIn. And it's more of a matter of audience that is on a certain platform, and I want to communicate in a way that people understand and is relatable for. That doesn't mean, I'm lying or like I'm not being me. It's just like I'm trying to adapt my communication to the people that are receiving it. But in general, like my whole brand and the offers that I have and everything is very like, I'm crazy for brands, and I create my own brand by just transforming me into things. And it's not only about, like choosing a color that I love, but really just nailing down every kind of deliverable and touch point in a way that it really reflects me and my way of speaking and laughing and approaching things. So you can see that, for example, not only from the color or the logo, but literally every piece of text on my website or on my captions, it's going to have this style of writing, for example, that is the way I make jokes or talk. So in general, I think I try to be very genuine and very me. Also, because my work is so personal, and I wanted to go back to your first question, which was about trauma and about processing things, because everything started with me literally drawing about mental health and the struggles I was going through. Of course, when I draw for myself and I do my personal projects, I can be 100% free with that, and I can really touch upon things. When I'm working for a client, it cannot be the diary of my sadness, I bring my approach and my style, but I have a briefing. So, and if it's just for me, I have freedom and I can decide what I talk about, how deep I go, how sad or happy or sassy I go. So I mean, with the following, I would say that it's because people believe the same things, and then they just can relieve a little bit of the pressure that they go through every day by just seeing something that they relate to, and they're like, oh, like I'm sad, but like this is kind of funny, just processing it. And for me, that's what illustration did, or like at least this approach did. I was going through a lot of things and a lot of struggles, and by drawing that and writing something funny about it, I could externalize the thoughts. And yeah, it's a little bit like in Harry Potter when they do the ridiculous.
Yeah.
You have no idea? Well, they have these spells.
Not my generation.
Okay, well, they have
I'm
these
Mary
spells.
Poppins generation.
Ridiculous. And basically they take their biggest fear, and then when you do ridiculous, it becomes something that makes you laugh. And it's a way of making something you fear, something heavy, you make it something manageable. And that doesn't mean, diminishing what you're going through, but just see it from a different point of view for a second. And that's what I try to do with my work. I also play a lot with extremes, with polar opposites.
Two things that I found really interesting. One is more of a question. How do you feel so safe to talk about it with such a big audience? And then the second one is, before I forget, a lot of people have a lot to share. And obviously you have, what is your following right now?
On Instagram.
Yeah, for instance?
More than 100 Instagram, TikTok not so much, like 15K.
Oh, flipping great. A huge audience, right? So people are resonating. So you are giving them something, obviously, that they resonate. And you're also, you're having this platform, but then you're also working with corporates. And a lot of people I know of have the struggle that they think they can't really show themselves when they're swimming in the ocean of a corporate environment. So the first question is, how do you feel so comfortable in sharing your inner self to the world, and where do you get your motivation and strength from? The second question is, based on what I just said, let's start with the first, if that's okay.
Okay, let's start with the first. I don't think you're less miserable if you don't share yourself. I always try to, I'm not really like an optimist. I always think of the worst thing. And the thing is that you're not happier if you don't share who you are. You're as miserable. So I much rather, like show my true self and make the jokes that makes me laugh, as opposed to not do them, because I would probably feel more miserable, like the same amount. And
so this is your well-being ritual. This is your personal well-being ritual.
Yeah. Cool. And I mean, I do care about the things, of course. I have a little bit of sense. I read the room, and I'm mindful about that. Of course, at the beginning when I started illustrating, and literally it was just like my friends, like people from Italy that knew me, that were following me. I was really unsure whether I should post it. And then at university, I met my best friend Benji, and I was telling him, I'm not sure if I should post these projects that I do, or these other things. And then he told me, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? People are going to realize that you can draw, or that you're a designer. Boo-hoo, horrible. What are they going to say? Oh, she can draw? Or she draws and she writes this? Okay, great. Damn, you're so right. Yeah, so that's why I found the courage of posting it. I think at the beginning I was much more scared of, because things are that I draw. Of course, I'm not going to go in detail into spilling tea about gossip or things I go through. But I was really scared at the beginning of oh my God, this thing is about this heartbreak. Is this boy gonna think that I did it for him? And now I'm just whatever.
How did you get to whatever?
I think I push myself to post it nevertheless, and try to remember, what's the worst thing is going to happen? Is this person going to realize that you're heartbroken? Well, you're not the first or the last, and that's okay. And also, it's about the process for me, right? Illustration is not only, it became a product, but it was about the process of doing that and feeling better about it, and feeling better about how I felt through that.
Giulia, is there a recipe in that? If you would have tons of students that you would teach about creativity, but also becoming yourself and overcoming yourself to enlighten the world with what you do?
Well, I think it's always a matter of, for example, in my case, there was this emotional thing going on, which made it a little bit hard. in general, I would really stick with what Benji said, just try a lot of things. And if you find something that you really like, and to do that, in order to do that, you really need to try a lot of things. And I did try a lot of things. I think the mindset should be really, if you want to share it and you're scared to share it, just think of what's the worst thing that's going to happen. And I would say that in most cases, it's simply people around you realizing that you are passionate about something. And it doesn't even have to be about you're good at something. You're just passionate about something.
How's there a difference? That's so good. What's the difference between being good at something and having passion for it?
I think like the being good at something is going to put a lot of pressure in the sense of like, am I good enough to post it?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I good enough to share it, or to, offer myself as a professional or as a freelancer because I do this? And I think it puts a lot of pressure. Like in my case, I'm horrible at telling myself you're good enough at something. Most likely I'm going to tell myself, you're not good enough. You don't deserve that, blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, so I think that you're passionate about something solves the problem. Because if you're passionate about something and you just want to talk about it and you just want to share the experience of doing that, it's totally legit that you do that. You don't have to post it. It's not necessary. It also could be just about you talking about it with your friends. There are people passionate about things that don't even have the courage to talk about it with friends, or like admit that they're passionate about something because they're afraid they're maybe not gonna be taken seriously. So sharing is also, the way I'm using sharing is not only about social media, it's also about real life.
So this is for you the first step. Understanding what you're passionate about and then sharing it. So why?
Yeah.
Why sharing it? What's the benefit of sharing it then?
Well, I think just in my life, sharing the things I do has been, I mean, of course, like later on also about an economic thing because I managed to become a freelancer. But for me, really the main gain has been in terms of like human connections, family, friends, finding my community. I always felt like a weird kid that was going through a lot of things. And I had friends, but I never fully related to them. And it was always a bit hard for me. And I always felt like very, very alone and very lonely. I do still feel lonely, but in a good way. I don't feel alone. And that is because through sharing what I do, my passions, I got to meet a lot of friends that are my community, and they are my people, and they are more in my creative field, and they understand what I do. I met so many friends on Instagram and through events here in Berlin about illustration and so on, and like in these creative art fields. And they're not just like people, they're LinkedIn connections. Like they're my friends, and we go on holiday, we have dinner, we meet every week. And to me, as a human being, that is the most rewarding and life-saving thing, to be honest, because you cannot do any fashion and any kind of thing if you're just on your own. And it is important to have those people that understand what you're talking about, love you, and are gonna be there either to have a drink if you have a mentee breakdown, or if you want feedback on something. And yeah, I think finding your community and finding your people is what makes us feel like we belong in this world. Well, I'm gonna get cheesy as a word now.
And not fitting in.
Yeah.
Yeah, Giulia. Yeah. I can totally relate.
The second question now, but I.
Yeah. The second question. Yeah, right. Thank you. Yeah, so a lot of people hold back because they are swimming in the corporate field, and you're just doing it anyways, right? You're as you said, you're yourself. Is that correct? You're just doing the whatever.
I mean, I don't think it's the whatever. Like I think
not in a bad way.
Have like no. I think I do have some like strategic mindset already like incorporated somehow, so I don't have to. I don't know, it comes like kind of natural to be like strategic with the things I do. I think I have the privilege of being an artist. So even though I'm in the corporate world, people do expect us to be a little bit the weirdos in the room. So I think there is that privilege. As I said, I have a defined style or approach or direction I'm going to take with my work. What I do, I just communicate myself a bit more receiver oriented, more audience oriented based on the platform I'm communicating to. For example, on LinkedIn, I'm going to do more like maybe process posts or case studies posts, as opposed to Instagram, where I'm going to give more of a glimpse of my daily life, my holiday, my breaks, but also my illustration, my design process, my challenges, and so on. And I mean, with, of course, how the world is going and AI rising and so on, I have the feeling that the real value of the next years is going to be personality. And very often that's what I see like brands looking for. They want artists that not only deliver, but also have a voice and are able to talk, endorse, and participate to certain activations, events, or campaigns. So yeah, I mean, at this point, I think we really can say, if you don't want me to talk or, have a personality, literally like ask ChatGPT, because that's how it's going, and it's not even a joke anymore. So yeah, I mean, I have an extremely personal brand. And I think there is extreme value in communicating who you are and yourself. And for me, as I started doing this when I was 22, my personal brand is not only a mask that stands before me, is a dialogue. It's something that helped me grow. Maybe I projected things I wanted to be in that, and it projected things back at me. And it's generally, a dress. It's something that like really communicates and helps me grow. And yeah, it's really flexible. And I think that's, how personal brands should be.
Yeah.
You don't pull up a mask and you make it all polished, corporate, perfect, but you use the power of being something small and flexible and changing to communicate who you are, and sometimes that gives you input back.
Do you think you're a change maker?
Sorry, I'm a change maker? Oh wow. I don't have enough self-esteem to define myself. I think I'm a change maker in my life. I mean, I like who I'm becoming. And I like how, what I do is making me change and making me feel better. And that's pretty much enough for me. I don't know if I'm a change maker, but I like to think that with what I do, maybe I support people in their process of changing, and especially with branding. To be honest, I love to see how, for small entrepreneurs, startups, and so on, having an identity is helping them to find more of their voice and to go for the change that they want to bring with their mission.
What is one thing you want to give to the world right now, some wisdom from your path that you wish you would have known before, so things were smoother?
Passion is the most precious thing we have, because it truly makes us happy independently from other people. And I'm a very independent person, and I don't like to rely my happiness on someone else. And my passions make me feel truly happy about what I do and help me relieve pain or create a situation of joy when I'm feeling good. And I'm not saying that passion should become your job. I think sometimes it can ruin it. I think it's totally fine to just have a passion after your job that pays the bills, that just makes you feel better. And there's nothing wrong with a job that just pays the bill. But like finding a passion, something that makes you feel better, I think it's really vital. And it can be really anything. Do puzzles, do pottery. But like my advice, use your hands. That's gonna make you feel better, calm you down. At least it does for me. To not be on a screen or anything, but just like use my hands and focus on something physical. And sometimes for me, it's also steaming, ironing. Perfect. That does it. Really. I'm not gonna be picky here. It's fine. But like, just do something with your hands. And I think, passion is the key, and it just doesn't only bring, fulfillment and joy, but it often brings people along, and you need that.
That's a wrap on another Changelicious episode, where transformation never tasted so good. If your soul's feeling fed, don't forget to follow, leave a love note, aka review, and share the goodness with somebody really ready to flip the script. For more juicy insights and sweet inspiration, follow me, Hedi Schaefer, and let's keep stirring up change that sticks. Until next time, stay real, stay bold, and keep it Changelicious.